Alright, so today's movie review is Gulliver's Travels from 1939 from Fleischer Studios through Paramount. And let me show you the critic description. Gulliver washes ashore on a Lilliput and attempts to prevent war between that tiny kingdom and its equally minuscule rival, Belafiscu, as well as smooth the way for the romance between the princess and the prince of the opposing lands. In this, he is alternately aided and hampered by the Lilliputian town crier and general fuss budget, Gabby. A life-threatening situation develops when the bumbling trio of Blefusco spies Sneak, Snoop, and Snitch manage to steal Gulliver's pistol. Alright, so now let me share you my thoughts on the plot. The plot, I give it a 2 out of 5. I'm not going to lie, I was really bored with this story. It is a bit more exciting towards the end, where it's crescendoing, where those spies, they're pointing the pistol at Gulliver as he's not looking. In the end, though, the reason to watch this movie is to see the rotoscoping mixed with the background animation, beautiful designs and whatnot. That's pretty much it. This is definitely a more I would say style over substance kind of film. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about the plot. Alright, so the acting, I gave it a 2 out of 5. So as these are voice actors, I thought it was just okay, not great. I just thought some of the dialogue and some of the things they were talking about weren't super interesting. Though I do think the singing is good, especially with the prince and the princess. They were probably the more interesting characters. Gulliver himself is just okay, not great. Just the way that people talk in these movies from Fleischer, it just feels off. Like, it doesn't feel realistic like in Snow White. These feel much more like a short than they do a narrative feature-length film. This feels like a stretched out cartoon, animated short. That's why I gave the acting a 2 out of 5. Alright, set design. So as this is an animated film, I'm talking more about the background animation. I thought it looked really good, 3 out of 5. There's some rough spots with some of the characters, but the backdrops looked really, really beautiful. Really great paintings. Really dynamic drawings and whatnot. And I'll get into more of the camera angles and whatnot. But I did notice that the more fleshed out characters, they looked a little odd, a little uncanny valley. But the more cartoony with like the big noses, big eyes and all of that, right? The classic cartoon kind of characters, they fit in just fine. It's just for some reason the design of Gulliver and of the prince and princess felt very uncanny valley to me. Yeah, so we'll move on to the next portion. Alright, cinematography. So this is the animation itself, the actual designs, the actual characters, coloring, all of that. I give it a 3 out of 5. I thought it was really impressive. But when you compare it to Snow White, which came out before this film, it doesn't look super great. It looks a lot better there. Here, it's pretty interesting. I think the rotoscoping is definitely a really cool piece of technology that the Fleischers developed. I just felt, though, we've seen better animated films already by the time this one came out. So that's why I gave it a 3 out of 5. Alright, the music, 2 out of 5, pretty forgettable. The best song is the one between the prince and the princess. It's the most romantic one. I think it's like All's Alright or something like that. Apparently it was nominated for Best Song at the Oscars, but of course lost to Somewhere Over the Rainbow from Wizard of Oz. 1939 was a very packed year, so kind of understandable why the Fleischers didn't win anything there, but yeah, 2 out of 5 for me. Music is just okay, pretty forgettable. Okay, so overall that brings my score to a 2.4 out of 5, which is a 48% on Criticlist. And so now let me break down my Criticlist score. No graphic language. There's some fighting when it comes to violence, but nothing gruesome. No nudity or sexual content. There's some light kissing. Political bias? No. Family friendly? This is a very family friendly film. It's up there with like a Disney film. Like kids would like it. Like nothing offensive or anything like that. Okay, for entertainment value, I'm going to be honest, it's a pretty boring film. I wasn't the biggest fan of it. I think Disney did better than Fleischer did with these movies. I wish we got to see more from Fleischer, though. because the next film they made, which I've reviewed on the channel, Mr. Bug Goes to Town, was a huge flop and killed all the movies they ever were going to do afterward. So that's kind of a shame. I would have liked to see what more they could have done. But anyways, so overall, would I recommend this movie? Not really. I think their Popeye cartoons are fantastic. I love Fleischer. I love those characters. You know, Betty Boop as well. But this movie's a bit of a dud. I get why it's not hailed as much of a classic as Snow White is. The rotoscoping's cool, and so are the colors and the look and whatnot, but the voice acting really drags it down for me and makes it a very mediocre film, if I'm honest. And same goes for the music, very mediocre and forgettable. So I would recommend more of something like Snow White from this era. Although, if you're an animation enthusiast and want to learn more about animation history, you definitely need to check out this movie just to see what could have been, if that makes sense. But anyways, those are my thoughts overall on Gulliver's Travels from 1939, and that concludes today's movie review.